The book's ornate, dark cover seemed to breathe tales of the uncanny, its title promising a collection of hauntings and otherworldly horrors. A solemn tombstone stood silhouetted against a shadowed skyline, a silent invitation to delve into its unsettling contents. The rhythmic turning of bicycle wheels carried them across the serene landscape, a distant, elegant spire gently beckoning on the horizon. With each steady pedal stroke, a quiet sense of adventure or reflection seemed to settle upon their moving forms. Bathed in the bright morning sun, the grand old house stood silently, its many windows gazing out onto a solitary path. Yet, the stark word "gone" lingered, hinting at a profound emptiness that filled the air around the quiet structure. The rider on the blue bike seemed intent on their course, a slight parting of their lips hinting at their focus. Trailing just behind, the other gazed softly at the uneven path, the simple joy of the ride palpable as they neared the unique, textured shape. Nailed to the weathered wood, a crumpled yellow sign offered a stark, unwelcoming declaration. Its bold letters, "Condemned" and "No Trespassing," hung heavy in the air, a silent but absolute barrier against anyone seeking entry. A figure held a $10 bill, their gaze fixed on it with a troubled, contemplative expression. The other figure's challenging smirk and taunting words, "What's the matter, you chicken?" pressed down on them, even as the money was persistently offered, met only by averted eyes and a silent, unyielding reluctance. One figure stood, their gaze quietly observing the other, who ran with a joyful, unburdened stride. Bicycles lay casually discarded nearby, marking a fleeting moment of carefree play. A flicker of worry crossed their face as they glanced back, perhaps questioning the path ahead. With a heavy heart, they then turned to face the worn door, the broken bell a stark reflection of the apprehension lingering within them. With eyes wide, a sudden exclamation burst from them, their gaze fixed on something unseen to the left. The urgency in their voice hinted at a shared situation, perhaps a swift warning or a startling revelation. With a new resolve ignited by the sudden discovery, they began to ascend, each step deliberate. Money was clutched tightly in their hand, a silent testament to the path they had chosen. After their deliberate ascent, their path was abruptly sealed, eliciting a sharp exclamation that it was locked. Their determined posture, facing the unyielding door, conveyed the sudden halt to their hopeful progress. With a soft gasp, their wide eyes intently scanned the view beyond the clear pane, seeking a way forward after their ascent was blocked. The boarded-up window nearby added a layer of mystery to their silent contemplation. With a loud crunch, one hand deliberately pushed a wad of bills through a narrow gap in the wooden barrier, challenging another to retrieve their own funds from the unseen depths. An exasperated voice questioned the logic of such impulsive actions, highlighting the frustration of the moment. Leaning into the wooden barrier with hands pressed flat, they expressed frustration at the lack of visibility through the narrow gap. From below, an impatient voice goaded them, pushing them to move forward despite their apprehension, reminding them that the money had been exchanged. Holding the crumpled paper, their wide, concerned gaze followed something unseen to the right. A thoughtful frown creased their brow, reflecting the lingering frustration and the unsettling value of what had just transpired. The furrowed brows and narrowed gaze hinted at a simmering frustration, a clear shift from earlier concern. With a decisive, almost defiant grip, they crumpled the paper tightly before letting it fall from their open hand, watching it vanish into the unseen below. Expressing exasperation at the scene before them, the blonde character watched as the other, with a challenging smirk and an outstretched arm, dared them to retrieve what was theirs from the darkened opening. The playful yet persistent taunt of "Buucck, now who's chicken, HUH," provoked a defiant, gesturing response. With arms crossed and a knowing look, one watched as the other, perhaps feigning disinterest, stated plainly they simply couldn't see it. Despite the taunting cries of "Now who's chicken," the blonde character, with a determined set to their back, resolutely descended into the dark opening. A final, cheeky gesture emerged from the gloom, prompting the other to laugh in clear triumph at the challenge accepted. With their bicycle discarded, they sat hunched beneath the tree, their gaze fixed on the foreboding house. The taunt still echoed, but a silent hesitation now clouded their eyes as they contemplated the true cost of proving they weren't chicken. With a sudden, fierce resolve, their hand closed tightly around a rough stone. No longer hunched, every fiber of their being coiled, preparing for the daunting path ahead. With a decisive flick of their wrist, they sent the rough stone arcing towards the ornate window of the tower. An impatient voice called out, demanding Jake cease their dawdling, the weight having clearly worn thin. With hands clasped behind their back, they stood perfectly still, their gaze fixed intently upwards. A quiet defiance mixed with a hint of anxious anticipation filled the moment as they watched for the impact of their earlier action. Their face contorted in a furious grimace, they cried out, demanding that Jake stop being an asshole. With eyes tightly squeezed, their voice conveyed a desperate blend of anger and urgent frustration at the reckless act. The furious words still hung in the air, stirring a sudden gust of wind. Leaves tore free from the branches, scattering like fragments of the raw emotion that had just erupted. The figure with the bicycle, turning their back to the house, declared vehemently that they didn't care, telling the other to stay and rot. Watching their retreating form with wide, conflicted eyes, the person on the left seemed to weigh the finality of those harsh words as leaves swirled in the wind. The figure on the bicycle pedaled slowly away, their gaze fixed downwards as if burdened by unseen weight. Despite their vehement declaration, the distant house, now a mere silhouette, seemed to silently question the resolve that had just been voiced. Crudely tacked to a weathered post, a tattered sign blared its stark message, condemned, and no trespassing. The bold letters hung heavy with a sense of finality, as leaves drifted by, silent witnesses to a desolate, abandoned place. Against the pale, indifferent sky, fragments of a forgotten past drifted aimlessly from the decaying pillars. Carried by the wind, these torn whispers scattered into the vast emptiness. Rising starkly against the pale sky, the mansion's silhouette loomed, a silent, imposing presence under the indifferent gaze of a solitary sun. Its darkened form seemed to absorb all light, a chilling testament to forgotten days and what lay within. With a stern gaze directed towards one companion, the figure holding a bike questioned how someone could have simply left another behind, especially if they were potentially injured. The third figure, arms crossed and eyes downcast with frustration, murmured about the missing person's habitual recklessness, while their companion listened intently. With a stern gaze, one figure delivered a sharp tap to their companion's head, admonishing them about their language. The other flinched, wincing visibly as they cried out in protest, clearly feeling the sting. With arms crossed and gaze averted, one companion sternly declared that the other's perceived humor would lead to being grounded. The figure being admonished rubbed their head, looking down in remorse as the third, reaching for the car, offered an apology for the situation, their eyes conveying a hint of concern. Calling out Jake's name, the figure searched with a worried gaze. A moment before, their head had been bowed in thought, arms crossed, following their stern pronouncement that Jake was grounded for 6 weeks, without internet, for finding something amusing. Slumped in the car, one figure hesitantly admitted they'd dismissed the situation as a prank or thought the other had simply gone home. Their companion, eyes wide with alarm, pointed an accusing finger, demanding to know why they'd waited so long when someone could be trapped inside. Meanwhile, a third individual urgently called out Jake's name, their worried gaze fixed on the distant building. Leaning into the shadowed opening, their voice rang out, demanding Jake emerge immediately with an edge of firm authority. A determined concern furrowed their brow as they gripped the splintered frame, searching the darkness within. Their gaze remained fixed on the shadowed opening, waiting for Jake to emerge as the demand echoed in the silent air. A quiet tension settled in their posture as they stood perfectly still, anticipating a response from within the darkness. No answer came after their insistent demand for Jake, only the quiet stillness of the dark house. A softer, more hesitant Jake then broke the silence, revealing a creeping worry in their gaze. When no answer came for Jake, A troubled frown creased their face, their wide eyes casting a worried glance back into the silent darkness. Their slight turn and tense expression spoke of deep unease, as if the quiet stillness itself held a hidden threat. With wide, worried eyes, one individual pointed towards the ominous darkness of the open cabinet, seeking confirmation that Jake had truly gone inside. From behind, a simple, heavy "yeah" confirmed their fears. Frantically, a hand first tried the doorknob, then pounded hard against the door, seeking a response. With a tense posture and a worried call for Jake, they waited, a growing sense of unease settling upon them. With a face contorted in distress and wide, fearful eyes, they shouted urgently, demanding Jake answer them right away. Their hand continued to pound frantically against the unyielding door. Frantically, a figure lunged through the damaged opening, their outstretched arms reaching into the void as they desperately called out for Jackson Lee Curry to answer them. Below, two onlookers watched the desperate search with focused, uncertain gazes. Having just lunged through the damaged opening, a voice, tight with fear, cried out Jake's name into the suffocating darkness. Only an eerie silence answered the desperate plea, deepening the unease. Having plunged through the opening, only profound darkness greeted them, prompting a frantic, echoing cry of "Jake" into the void. Their unseen gaze was undoubtedly fixed on the oppressive gloom, desperately searching for any sign of the one they called out to. With a worried gaze fixed on their companion, whose eyes were wide with surprise, a name was uttered. But before any answer could be given, a sharp, insistent beep echoed from a small device, demanding immediate attention. Their head turned, a thoughtful, questioning gaze sweeping the sudden void. As if grappling with an unanswered query, a silent uncertainty hung in the air around them. A desperate plea to "Mom" tore through the air as the smaller figure reached out, struggling to hold back the one pushing through an unseen opening. From nearby, a questioning voice called out, "Janet," the sound lingering around the silent, looming structure. An urgent beep emanated from the handheld phone, the insistent ringing then seeming to resonate with the distant silhouette of the house. With a grave gaze fixed on the smaller figure beside them, their expression was heavy with unspoken concerns about the persistent call. With a serious expression, the sheriff sought confirmation from the taller figure regarding their unsettling claim. Standing firm with a worried gaze, they reiterated their absolute certainty, explaining how two individuals had gone into the house and simply never come back out, a statement reflected in the smaller figure's downcast, silent concern. With a contemplative the uniformed figure, arms crossed, intently questioned the younger one about their presence so far out on the town's outskirts. The younger figure, avoiding eye contact, simply looked down, their body language conveying a quiet apprehension. The sheriff, arms crossed and gaze firm, pressed for answers, clearly disbelieving the younger one's quiet claim of nothing. In response, the younger figure only lowered their head further, softly repeating their denial, weighed down by an unspoken burden. Standing before the ominous, shadowed house, the questioning figure's voice carried an incredulous tone, demanding if they truly believed they could trespass undetected. The two figures they addressed remained largely silent, one adopting a posture that hinted at either defensiveness or slight exasperation. The authoritative figure's stern gaze and pointed question about allowing a friend to venture inside alone bore down on the younger one. With head bowed and fists clenched, they offered no reply, their silence a heavy testament to profound regret. With a firm stance and hands on their hips, one figure pointedly reminded the other to answer the question that had been asked. The addressed figure remained silent, their back turned and head bowed, clearly avoiding the demanding gaze. With a downcast gaze, the youthful figure confessed they had given $10. This revelation prompted the other, hands flying up in disbelief, to question the payment for entry, the shock evident in their wide-eyed reaction. With eyes still cast downwards, the youthful figure hesitantly explained they had thrown the money in, and the other had gone in after it. Their quiet confession carried a noticeable apprehension, hinting at a regret for the impulsive act. With a pained grimace, the central youthful figure offered apologies and explanations, claiming they were just playing chicken for a bet. Simultaneously, the smaller figure, eyes cast downwards, quietly expressed their sincere belief that the other person would have returned, while an unseen voice began to express growing unease about the true nature of their friend's game. With their gaze fixed on the silent, imposing house, the central figure let out a thoughtful their posture conveying a moment of deep consideration. The smaller figures waited nearby, their quiet presence reflecting the weight of the earlier confession and the path ahead. Leaning in with a serious posture, the uniformed figure's shadowed gaze conveyed their doubt, wondering aloud if the youth's friends might merely be playing a trick. A palpable unease hung in the air, as the question implied a deeper, more serious concern than a simple prank. Their gaze, sharpened by burgeoning suspicion, fixated on the dark, narrow opening, the undeniable feeling that something was amiss solidifying their unease. The weathered would seem to whisper of hidden truths, stirring a deeper sense of dread within them. With a surge of exasperated determination, the figure in overalls threw their hands up, declaring their resolve to enter the ominous darkness. The deformed figure reacted with a questioning shock, hand raised as if to stop them, while the person on the far left watched intently, their grave gaze reflecting how far the situation had gone. With a commanding presence, one figure pressed forward, calling out with urgency as another scrambled desperately up the house siding. From the side, a smaller observer watched the unfolding scene with a gaze full of worry, their silent plea echoing, "Mom." "No." The uniformed figure firmly grasped their arm, urging them to pause, hold on a minute. Just. With a heavy, resigned slump of their shoulders, the person in overalls kept their head bowed low, eyes cast downwards, accepting their situation. The uniformed figure, flashlight beam piercing the shadows of the broken entrance, declared with firm resolve that they would handle the situation. Standing nearby, the figure with glasses watched them intently, while the child beside them looked on with a troubled, uncertain gaze. The uniformed figure peered into the dark opening, their flashlight beam cutting through the gloom as they called out, searching for any sign of life. Their gaze then sharpened, falling on a single foot visible just beyond the broken planks, as they murmured the names Mrs. Curry and Jake with a hint of growing unease. With a panicked expression, they desperately called out, pleading for the other to halt their actions. Unheeding, the determined figure continued to climb into the dark opening, their gaze fixed ahead. Looking back with wide, exasperated eyes, they sharply reminded the other that this situation was entirely their making. With a firm set to their mouth, they ordered them to stop their complaints and remain where they were. With a deeply worried expression and an outstretched hand, they desperately pleaded, "Mom." "No." But a sandal-clad foot, already moving through the wood frame, accompanied a quiet, determined "please." After the desperate plea, the world seemed to hold its breath. A stark landscape of gnarled trees emerged under the low, fading sun, mirroring a silent, heavy question hanging in the air. With wide, troubled eyes, they seemed to grasp the full weight of their desperate plea. A dawning horror twisted their features as the stark reality settled in. The world held its breath, reflected in the gnarled trees that stood like silent, troubled sentinels against the fading light. Within their intricate branches, a subtle, almost pulsing glow began to reveal itself, a mysterious whisper in answer to what was asked. Hunched on the porch steps, the figure sat wrapped in themselves, their gaze lost to the deepening twilight. The barren trees beyond the silent car seemed to echo the quiet despair that settled heavy around them. Each quiet step on the dark stairs was measured, a hesitant farewell to the stillness of the porch. Slowly, they moved deeper into the enveloping twilight, their path uncertain but decided. Emerging from the gnarled shadows, their silhouette moved with quiet determination towards the waiting car. The deep blue night held a silent anticipation, as if witnessing a somber journey begin. Their hand reached the car, their grip firm on the door handle, ready to proceed. But as they pulled, A moment of frustration flashed through them. It was locked, unexpectedly barring their determined way. As their hand found its mark, the heavy door swung open, revealing an ethereal, vibrant blue light spilling forth from within. This sudden revelation hinted at a world both alluring and profoundly unnerving just beyond the threshold. Looking out from within the vehicle, a desperate face met their gaze through the glass, eyes wide with a palpable terror. Hands splayed against the window, the harrowing truth resonated. Trapped. The boundless waves surged beneath the night sky, their peaks reaching towards the veiled moon. A silent, immense world continued, indifferent to the urgent struggles unfolding just beyond. Peering out of the vehicle, their hands found purchase on the roof as their gaze lifted, fixed on the radiant, full moon. In the vast, silent expanse, a moment of profound calm seemed to settle, a stark contrast to the tumultuous journey. Their gaze, once fixed on the vast expanse, now fell with a quiet introspection. A subtle weariness settled upon their face as they looked down, lost in thought and the unspoken weight of what they had witnessed. Peering over the vehicle's edge, their gaze, heavy with a weary apprehension, settled upon the silent house. Their hands gripped tightly, betraying a deep reluctance to confront what waited within. The pale, full moon, a silent sentinel, cast its soft, haunting light over the world below. Against its vastness, small, dark shapes flitted across the deep blue, their silent dance deepening the quiet apprehension. With a gaze heavy from weary apprehension, they stood before the towering house, its windows glowing faintly. The open door, a silent invitation or a final trap, confirmed the stark, crushing whisper that they were caught. Their eyes, wide with sudden apprehension, darted back over their shoulder, fixing on something unseen in the shadows. Under the pale glow of the full moon, a chilling whisper of unease settled upon them. With a quiet resolve, they stood before the open door, their gaze fixed on the bright, unknown expanse that beckoned beyond. The apprehension that had settled upon them now solidified, hinting at the heavy decision of stepping into the uncertain path ahead. A lingering apprehension dimmed their wide, young eyes, a stark contrast to the quiet resolve they'd already formed. With a determined step, they moved through the brightly lit doorway, leaving the shadows of the room behind. The full moon, partially obscured by streaks across the dark sky, seemed to watch over the vast, uncertain path ahead. Its silent presence mirrored the lingering apprehension and quiet resolve carried into the night. The ominous silhouette of a grand house loomed against the deepening twilight, seemingly watched by dancing spirits in the air. A lone figure quietly stepped through a doorway, carrying a small token as they departed. At a distant, sunlit window, another gazed out at the bright, clear sky, their posture hinting at a quiet yearning.